derecha y este el láser.
Vale, perfecto.
¿Vale?
This is good for you, this is perfect. No te caigas a salir, que hay muchas. Vale. Espera. Bien. Perfecto. Voy a poner esta. Espérate, estas hay que quitarlas. Bien. Muy bien. Gracias.
Hello. Pay attention, please. We have... it's the teacher I have inside me. Okay, it's for me a great honor to... She is a good friend, and also she is a reference for me. And I hope for you too, because she has a lot of things to introduce to us. Thank you so much, Bey, to be here with us.
It's an absolute pleasure to be... Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Chele and Begonia, and I cannot wait to be involved in the conference. I'm Backner. I'm going to be talking for the next 30 minutes about designing immersive digital experiences and collaborative narratives. Ooh. There we are. So I'm a Web3 producer and I'm an artist. I design virtual experiences. So mainly right now I'm founder of something called Meshfair, which is the virtual art fair for 3D metaverse and VR creatives. I'm also the founder of Vueltta, which is an international arts collective doing immersive installations in the Decentraland metaverse. And I'm also assistant professor of emerging tech at Berkeley, Valencia. If you want to know more about my work, there's a recent interview with CNN on the Next Frontier program about playing in 2050, which is a really cool kind of roundup of everything that's happening right now in the industry. I'm mainly going to be talking about two installations as examples for this presentation. This, which we did for Metaverse Fashion Week on the work of Vivienne Westwood. This is me and Adrián Martínez, who is a very leading Valencian designer right now. He co-founded Vueltta with me. He's currently at the Collectible Art Fair in Brussels, so couldn't be with us right now. And I've just written a piece, if you are really interested in diving into this, called The Metaverse as a Radical Medium in Right Click Save magazine, which kind of takes some of these themes forward. This is Meshfair. Again, I'm going to be taking lots of examples from this. It's starting at the end of this month on the 26th to the 29th. So if you are inspired and want to dive deeper, do join us there. So why does this all matter first? This. Can you just give me a little show of hands, everyone that recognizes what this is? Okay, great. So most of everyone in the audience. So Apple Vision Pro came out 3-4 weeks ago now, kind of revolutionizing the access to information industry, let's put it that way. Tim Cook wants to make spatial computing a household term with the premiere of Apple Vision Pro. And then we have this narrative going on right now of Apple Vision Pro is spatial computing, but no one really knows what that means. So if we're going to start talking about immersive experience in virtual worlds, we kind of need to clarify that before we start. So according to the Washington Post, spatial computing could be mixed reality, augmented reality, holographic computing, the metaverse, extended realities, all these terms that are flying around in our industry right now. I'm going to use IBM's definition of this. It's a really useful one. IBM puts everything on a spectrum that it calls extended realities. So if we're talking about immersion, we have augmented reality on one side, which is digital content that we put on top of the real world. But it kind of stays separate from the real world. And it's low immersion. It's something you can see through your mobile phone, for example. Then in the middle, we have something we can call mixed reality, where that digital content interacts with the real world in some way. So maybe it's geographically specific. It could be information we can see on a phone that is associated with something in the real world environment. And it's kind of the medium immersive experience. And then on the final end, we've got virtual reality, which is a completely immersive virtual world. It closes us off from the real world and creates something entirely constructed in which we can play, perform, whatever we want. So if we think about that spectrum then, from augmented reality through to virtual reality, we can kind of call all of that extended realities. And this is the world in which I create and play. So this is a big market, global extended reality market, augmented reality, mixed reality, reached just under $30 billion in 2022, and it's expected to rise to $100 billion in 2026. So as people that are designing experiences in all worlds, this is something that is increasingly important in terms of what our clients, in terms of what our experiential design requires. So the narrative that has started to come through is that extended reality is the new platform for content. So this is Apple's development site about immersive experiences. This is where you would go as a developer to start creating these experiences. And it very clearly states, in Vision OS, you can design apps and games that extend beyond windows and volumes and let people immerse themselves in your content. But as someone who's worked in the industry now since 2021, that sounds really young, I know. Like, in our industry, it moves so fast. So 2021 is a long time ago in terms of virtual realities. And someone that's been in the industry since then, that's not quite what a lot of us in the industry are trying to create. There's a great quote from Herman Narula, which is, experiences will be the currency of our virtual societies. And this is a guy that created a company called Improbable, has received a lot of investment around multiplayer virtual environments. And he wrote the book called Virtual Society. And I'm going to be referencing this a little bit throughout the talk. So for me and Narula, extended reality is the new platform for society. It's about going beyond content to provide experiences which are about shared realities, memories, and contribution. I would say then the lexicon of immersive experience is being written right now in a growing number of virtual worlds. So although we're not walking all around with headsets on, we are starting to use our phones to access augmented reality in a big way. And this is going to be a sea change in how we start interacting as a society in another realm. You might have heard the word 2 years ago, metaverse, coming up. We can loosely call these new realities metaverses, but again, that's kind of gone out of favor, and Apple's starting to rebrand as spatial computing. I should say, like, if you have any questions going through this, then just let me know, because this can kind of act on many levels. So there are very many of these worlds coming through. This one's on Cyber, Roblox, Sandbox, Spatial, Hyper5, Fortnite, Decentraland, Nifty Island. Again, a bit of a show of hands. Anyone that recognizes all those terms? Awesome. Anyone that's never seen any of these brands before? Okay, great. So we have a great mix in the audience. I'm going to be talking about a few of these. The big thing you should know is that this is moving. So if we go back and take Fortnite, for example, Disney's just invested $1.5 billion in Epic Games, which is the developer of Fortnite, to start collaborating with them on new content, and we really should say new experiences. So what do we already know about immersive experience? I'm going to be sharing what I've learned in my work. I've produced so far about 4 virtual festivals, 50 events, and I've coded environments for Metaverse Art Week, Metaverse Fashion Week, Miami Art Week, and usually I work in a virtual world called Decentraland. So I'm going to be mainly focusing on that as an example. The first lesson I kind of want to share for you, especially coming from a design background, is that low poly does not necessarily equal low immersion. And by low poly, I mean low fidelity. I think we're very used to, right now, with our experience of things like AAA games, thinking that high fidelity environments, photorealism, rendering that is seamless is important for immersive experiences. And from my work so far, I have seen the absolute opposite. So this is Roblox. These are the top visited experiences in Roblox, another virtual world. And you can see that the top experience, Brookhaven RP, has had so far 44 billion visits. So that's 44 billion visits. That's an important environment to be working in. That is a lot of people that are within these environments. And Brookhaven, I'm going to show you a picture now of my students in Brookhaven. That's what it looks like. Right. So this is Brookhaven. It's an immersive environment where mainly people under 14 years old go to connect with friends, to role play, to talk, to have their own experience of a new reality in which they're working. 44 billion people, 44 billion visits so far. And this is where this comes in. So again, according to Nirula, and I absolutely agree with the statement, people want fulfillment from their virtual experiences first and foremost. If we can provide fulfillment, it doesn't matter in what form that fulfillment comes. People can be very accommodating in terms of graphics, rendering, frames per second, if that experience still makes them feel fulfilled in some way. So as a comparison, this is a great artist called Nathan Robert, who is building a metaverse right now called Mona. I jumped in last night into Nathan's experience, and you can see there's just me in there. It's a beautiful environment, but there's just me. We can compare that with the second most visited experience on Roblox, which is also about rabbits. This is Adopt Me by Uplift Games, and we have 35.6 billion visits so far. So in terms of what we're assessing these experiences then, we need to be diving in beyond fidelity and graphics. There's something else there that's engaging people within immersive experiences. And I think a big example of that is Minecraft. Just how popular this environment has become. It is huge. And yet you can see, for us as designers, it's very easy to scoff at these environments and think there's nothing there. We have to look beyond the surface of acceptable CGI graphics for films and look in terms of what are the fulfilling acts that happen within these spaces. Again, people want fulfillment from virtual experiences first and foremost. And that's often a really hard lesson for architects and designers. This is an architect I'm currently working with on Metaverse Art Week, Artemisia. She's a classically trained architect moving into the virtual space. This is an environment she's created in Mona. I'm the only person there. And so in working with her in creating things for Metaverse Art Week, it goes beyond the environment itself and into what happens within those environments. What is it that brings people back? And so we come to our second point. Game aesthetics do not equal games in this space. A lot of us come from a gaming background, a lot of us don't. I never gamed before I went into virtual environments, whereas a lot of the teams that I work with come from a gaming background. And so they bring this gaming aesthetic into what they do. And a lot of the people that are using virtual worlds expect a gaming aesthetic. I'll show you Meshfair in a second. One of the feedback I got from a lot of people is, why is it white? And from a fine art background, of course it's going to be white. But from a gaming background, this is something that we don't see in virtual environments right now. So a virtual world differs from a game in a few ways. Key among them is that being in a virtual world is a consequential place. This is really key. Games are about taking us out of real life and putting us in a different space. Things can happen in games that don't have consequence for us in reality. Whereas if we're talking about virtual worlds as conceived by many of us in the space, a virtual world, things happen in which have real world impact. I can earn my living within a virtual world. I can make friendships within a virtual world. I can create a career within a virtual world. And I can take that back and it influences what I'm doing in the real world. Now, we can argue that that happens already in gaming, and my partner is like nodding. He's from a gaming background, so for him, a lot of friendships are made in games and taken into the real world. For virtual worlds, we're hoping to take that further, and with the arrival of Web3 and crypto finance, that kind of became a reality for some of us working in Web3 metaverses. But you can see here, this is a installation by a company called Artifact, which I think 2.5 years ago, maybe less, Nike bought Artifact. So Nike saw that Artifact was doing this incredible work in terms of collective immersive experience for Web3 users, bought them to take them into the Nike fold. And so this is Artifact's installation on Cyber to allow Nike fans to start interacting with a virtual environment to mint and create NFTs. And this has had just over 92,000 visits. This is a project that I work on. This is Metaverse Music Festival, or Decentraland Music Festival. And you can see that the brands working in this space are not virtual brands. I'll show you here. You'll be able to spot Ozzy Osbourne, Buick, Motorhead, people that are looking at how virtual worlds are going to expand their fan reach into something tangible and meaningful for that fan base. So you can see it's a gaming aesthetic, it's low poly, but it's still having impact for the artists involved. Virtual world is a consequential pace, and we've seen that in the development of Mesh Fair. So last year I founded Mesh Fair as an art fair for GLB artists, which is the file format for virtual realities. This year we are curated by big London galleries like Unit London, Office in Park Berlin, Glitch Gallery in Marfa, Texas, Art Crush Gallery, who's worldwide, Vellum LA, and 12 more. The list goes on. So these are influential figures in the world of art who are also moving into virtual spaces because they feel that this is a third reality in which to create and curate meaningful experiences for people involved in the art world as well. So these are the artists that I'm working with this year. People like Lauren Moffat, who won the VR Art Prize a couple of years back, Leah Smithson, who creates installations for Apple. These are all people that are moving into the virtual world space, again, feeling like this is an environment in which we can create something different. So I want to show you a quick clip from Mesh Fair last year, and you will see these things coming into play. Gaming aesthetics, low poly environments, meaningful things. Linda Lowe out of Australia, her installation. Leah Smithson. Hyper Davey. Oggy Wells, and Rebecca Rose. So these are mainly 3D artists who are looking to explore their practice within virtual worlds. And all of us then come across this third point. So when we're dealing with immersive environments, we're also dealing with digital identity. And when I first developed the course on emerging technologies for Berkeley, this was my first lesson, because I think a lot of us don't yet realize the implication of this for design. So digital identities are often defined through our avatars, skins, wearables, profile names, and Web3 wallet addresses. They are something that we put on when we enter digital spaces. But that means that as creators of those experiences, we have to abandon all assumptions about our audience and visitors. Everything. If I look at a photo of some of the event participants in Mesh Fair last year, I see a robot, a bubble lady, a floating ball, and a guy with boxes on his head. I have no idea about age, gender, geography, politics, any shared references, language. I cannot make the assumptions that I'm making right now in talking with my audience. I don't have that as a designer designing for these spaces. And that means that when I work in these spaces, I know right now that these are some of the teams that I'm collaborating with on Decentraland Art Week. Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Germany, Hungary, India, Iran, Portugal, Spain, Taiwan, Turkey, Ukraine, United Kingdom, United States. A lot of people that work in virtual worlds come from geographies in which they cannot express their art in the geography in which they're based. So a lot of people in virtual worlds are from geographies. I work with a lot of people from Cuba. I work with people that cannot use Google tools because they've been shut down in their countries. And so we cannot assume anything about identity when we come into virtual environments. It means that as a designer, we have to think about accessibility and differentiation from the beginning. We have to think about multiple layers of fulfillment within one experience, because we cannot even make the assumption of the person I'm talking to isn't a child. It's this real differentiation. Unless we start token gating our experiences, we can't differentiate on audience. We have to be as accessible and differentiated as we can. And so if we're talking about design and experience about Vivienne Westwood, which is what I and Adrienne did for Metaverse Fashion Week last year, we had to put an experience together that would work on multiple levels. We couldn't even assume that anyone coming into that experience had heard of Vivienne Westwood. So we took a very simple approach of visual cues hidden within a physical space in the virtual world. So we created an installation, we created a tartan for a metaverse environment, we took visual cues from Vivienne's work and rewrote them into a virtual space. We then allowed people to access more layers of information if they required, if they wanted to, by doing what's kind of like a treasure hunt, but across the internet for information. But that information was tied into the physical space, the virtual space, in lieu of a kind of physical hunt that you had to do within the environment. Which meant that it could work on multiple levels, and we could reference things like Vivienne's work with climate change by using visual cues within this, which people could then dive into further if they wished. So there's this kind of accessible layers of content that we have to layer within virtual experience. We then organized a catwalk show, but with the community within Decentraland, which meant that those people could then create a response to Vivienne work if they wanted to. But again, these layers of accessibility. Which brings us to a second information thing, is that text does not equal information in metaverse environments, in virtual reality. We're so used to this. We're so used to being able to just put some text next to an obra, an artwork, and that being okay. And yet, in virtual worlds, it doesn't work. Where do we put the text? This is an installation by Mattia Cutini. How does text work in that world? Or this by Mika Aladev. This isn't a world in which you walk. So in terms of explaining this exhibition, it's still very important for artists and designers to have text associated with their works. But how do we do that in virtual worlds? So in Mesh, we decided to do the kind of Star Wars float of artist names above the exhibitions. And we decided that we would have this kind of white box gallery riff and then have info links underneath the exhibitions. And then we found out that no one follows links at all. Because if you're designing for virtual worlds, you have to appreciate that people want to stay in the virtual worlds. They don't want to be following external links. It's not like us on 2D internet. Like it's kind of like we like going down the rabbit hole of web pages. In virtual worlds, you do not want to do that. You want to stay within the virtual space. So links do not work. So instead, we thought, okay, great. This was Decentraland Wellness Week that I designed with a really great team at Decentraland earlier this year. We thought, okay, great. We'll make it a UI. We will add, this is doing a light show, but you can see there's like a UI up there. I think, great, wayfinding thing. We'll have it so you sort of have to click there. We had 15 people follow it in the entire event. Okay, it does not work. Even if we put it as a UI, it does not work. People do not follow external links. So then we had to think about, okay, how does that work? And what we thought, we took it from gaming, but we also took it from installation art. People like Team Lab, Meow Wolf out of Santa Fe. How do we then structure information throughout a virtual experience? Charlie, how am I doing for time? Is it okay? Oh, no. Good? We're good? Right. So instead of thinking about textual information, we have to think about interactivity and narrative arc as being our information flow. We have to think about progression of someone throughout an experience and drip feeding that information as they explore a virtual world. And so I worked with a really awesome designer called Kanzi, who wanted to create an experience for Wellness Week around Zen meditation. So he took a raccoon and he created a gaming-style interactive conversation with the raccoon to take you through this experience. So instead of writing about Zen meditation, instead of making an installation and putting access text next to it, he created the whole experience to deliver that information through conversations with a frog, with a raccoon, by making patterns in a virtual world garden. And I didn't record it, but at the top of the experience, to finish the game, he made it so you had to sit for 10 minutes without doing anything. So the game itself taught that lesson of pause within a game. For most of the gamers playing that was revolutionary. And it was the first contact for many of them with Zen meditation principles. So it worked as a narrative experience within a metaverse environment. This is our visualization for Mesh this year. So for many of the artists that we're working with, they still want the text. It's really important to them. Where is my text? And so to get around that, we've created this cube which interacts with the visitor to show the text, if people want to see the text. If they don't, they can just run to the center here, and it just teleports them into the experience. So if we want to interact with the text, we can. If not, we just physically move our bodies away from the text, and it takes us directly into the experience. We're yet to see if this works. I'll let Charlie know afterwards. Do people interact with these cubes to read the text before they go into the experience? So finally, we have this sense that we don't know who our visitors are. We don't know anything. We can't make any assumption about their geography, their politics, their gender, their age, their backgrounds. But we do know that a virtual experience and immersive design breaks these definitions. We no longer have something called a visitor, a participant, a collaborator, or creator. It completely merges all those different roles within an experience. I've seen this time and time again now, and I haven't even designed for this. So what happens when we create these immersive experiences is if we have a virtual world that functions as a virtual world, people start doing really strange things. So this is an art installation called High Polyist by Stephen de Quesnoy. And when I gave the tour of this in the virtual world, all of these people started instantaneously doing pole dancing around the exhibition. So it was an unplanned, instantaneous pole dancing flash mob that happened on this tour. And that, for me, is the moment you go, something different is happening here with our relationship with art in virtual environments, what the artist has created and what the participants are creating. We created an instantaneous art happening within a 12 by 12 meter cube in the metaverse. And people still talk about that. Oh yeah, you remember last year at Mesh that we did that pole dance around? Because it becomes an actual memorable experience that people have shared within a third environment. You can see here, this was Man Upon Man by Rebecca Rose. She's a 3D artist, she's a collage artist. This was her first virtual exhibition space. But she just took this and rolled with it. And so this was an experience she designed about war. And what happened was she created the chessboard for the size of our avatars in Decentraland. So then when people entered this space, instantaneously, people started playing chess with their bodies within this installation. This is just what happens in these environments. The first exhibition I did was I designed a gallery with Adrienne to present an exhibition for Ukraine. It was just after the invasion had been announced. And we raised $28,000 in one exhibition within the metaverse. And people started jumping on top of paintings. people love parkour. So we designed this gallery, and we hadn't expected that we'd left tiny, tiny overlap in the canvases coming off the gallery walls, and it was enough for people to play parkour across the paintings. That's when I fell in love with metaverse environments. It's like, oh, okay, there is something here. And this is a great weekly meetup on Thursday nights by something called the Whip meetup. This was their Whips Giving Parade in November of last year, and they invited designers to create floats. We just created floats. I didn't create one, I rode one. This is me riding a float in the Whips Giving Parade. And people instantaneously took the mic in a Discord meetup to tell things about what they were thankful for. And again, it became this artistic happening, floats designed by other artists, going down a virtual Macy's parade, all of us riding it. It becomes something that's tangible, it's time limited, it's memorable, it is something beyond gaming. And then this happens. So this is social media posts posted by people that came to Mesh Fair last year. And what we saw happening was people went into the art exhibitions. So this is an installation. This is by Nyanki, a Japanese manga comic artist. This isn't anything to do with her installation. This is some guy who's gone in her cube and dressed himself to make a response visually to the installation, and then taken an image of that and shared it on social media. And so you have these layers of content being created on virtual events. And this isn't just a one-off. We had hundreds of these images. This is a guy from Japan called Kenji, who's dressed himself to mimic idle hands by an artist called Hannes Hummel. This is a creator called Metageist in an installation called Marvelous Maui's Wonderland by Mellowman. And you can't even in this one tell the difference between who's the visitor and who's the installation. This is an installation by Alex Atkinson, and this guy in the middle is Hugh Powell. This is one of the people I work with in Decentraland. This isn't planned. No one told them to start interacting with the exhibitions in this way. But this is the urge that comes from virtual worlds. It's a very different type of interaction between visitor, collaborator, creator, and an environment. So just a summary. Low poly doesn't necessarily equal low emotion. Game aesthetic definitely doesn't need to equal a game. Digital identities mean that we have to abandon all assumptions about what we are creating for. Text does not necessarily give information. That line between visitor, participant, collaborator, and creator is absolutely blurring, and we don't even know where this is going to go yet. This is just, for me, the most exciting part of this, that we're diving into an unknown realm of design. And so if you are interested in this kind of thing, Mesh Fair is opening in a couple of weeks. You're more than welcome. We're doing tours with people like Kenza Zawari from Unit London, Alex Scott from LA, Lauren. All these, the itinerary is going to be on meshfair.com very soon. It's not right now, but I need to put it on this week. If you want to know more about work, it's there, backner.com, and you're very welcome to email me with any questions. And again, thank you, Chelly, for the opportunity to talk today. Thank you.
So,
I think there's one behind as well. I think Chelly's just... I mean, the elephant in the room is AI. We're seeing extraordinary things happening right now in virtual environments in terms of real-time rendering, in terms of real-time rendering of auditory and visual experience, in terms of rendering of 3D objects from 2D visual cues. We are seeing now, so coding right now for Decentraland in TypeScript. So although it's a very flexible system, it's not very easy for someone to just pick up and start running with it. I've seen 3 GPT-4 tools that can already code for Decentraland from just textual cues. So that's going to open up creating for this space enormously in just the next 2 years. And then beyond that, we see the physical apparatus to access these worlds coming through. So for example, at the moment, worlds like on Cyber, you can access in a virtual reality headset. Decentraland right now is developing, they have a client launch in May, which hopefully will then roadmap to that integration. At the moment, Decentraland is just browser and client-based. So it's moving so fast in terms of access tools and also what is possible within these worlds that I think we're just going to see a completely new media space opening up for most of us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hands up again so I can remember. We have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm going to pass this so we can just lift it in the corner. Yeah, it's on.
So I have 2 questions. What do you think about openness? I guess Apple is not famous for doing open stuff. So do you think it's going to be something like the web in terms of open architecture and ownership and collaboration, and real collaboration and freedom of speech and whatever? And the other is, have you recognized aspects of this virtual cultures leading out into the real world?
Those 2 really great questions. It's an obsession right now for a lot of people working in virtual environments. Apple's not. Back in the day, I was working in mobile phones, so I used to produce conferences on open source mobile software for mobiles. And so we saw in 2006, 2008, the impact of iPhone on that environment. So back in that day, Nokia, if anyone remembers Nokia, was going towards an open source strategy. And there was a great guy called Ari Jaxi that was designing open source tools for Nokia and was trying to completely open source the operating system. And then Apple came in and just boom, that conversation stopped. Everything became about usability for the end user and no one was talking about openness whatsoever. In the internet and the virtual worlds, we are more closer because we don't have to rely on hardware yet to those conversations that were happening. Obviously, a lot of people that have built virtual worlds come from a hacker open source background. Decentraland is really interesting. It was created in a hacker house in Argentina. It has been built on decentralized ethos and ideology since the beginning, which is why a lot of artists, we want to work in that environment. But we also see that most people make their decisions as designers on daily active users, the DAU. You'll see that a lot if you start working in virtual worlds. And at the moment, the virtual world with the most DAU, daily active users, is not anything to do with Apple, it's to do with Fortnite, who is owned by Epic Games, who is a Tencent company. This is a company that couldn't be more closed. And one of the reasons they have to be so closed is they work predominantly with younger people. And so we have to start having these conversations about the difference between freedom of expression, freedom of access, freedom of coding, and safeguarding within those environments. So for example, Fortnite, in Decentraland, I can stream a video. I can stream something. I can't stream it from YouTube because YouTube doesn't allow it. It doesn't allow CORS, the cross-origin resource sharing. But I can take an M3 U8 link and I can put it in Decentraland. I can't do that in Fortnite. I used to be able to, but they had to close it down because of wide-scale IP issues, content issues, the fact that in an environment that's a closed digital environment, if you do it in that way, you have to be responsible for every single asset that is shown and consumed within that environment. So if we think about the conversations we're having about just 2D social media and the need for moderation and the need for accountability in those environments, we can scale that up by a factor of 100 if we're talking about immersive environments and people going into those environments when we don't know their age, their gender, we don't know anything about our audience. So it's a very, very good question. And it's something that we're really trying to tackle in the industry right now because we just don't know. We don't know how we can be responsible and accountable for virtual environments without making them closed. And that's a really, really difficult question for a lot of the ideologies being brought into that. So that's cool. And then the second question. Yeah, yes. I emote. Like Dami will laugh at me. I'm in meetings, I'm going, which is an emote, or like this means, yeah, you know, we've had lots of success. Yeah, it just becomes much more physical because you're used to, in virtual environments, you're used to emoting. It's like a physical interaction with the space. A lot of us also find we start dressing differently because once you've had the freedom of, in a virtual environment, completely curating your own image, it's very hard to stop that then when you're kind of stepping out in a physical environment. It frees you up. I work with a lot of gender non-binary people within Metaverse. It's a really awesome place for people to explore different identities and start getting used to being within different identities, interacting with people, again, in a meaningful way. And then that can often empower people to take that sense of self-determination and take that into physical environments as well. Thank you. Okay.
Actually, I was going to ask the same question, but maybe I'll do a follow-up on that. Who defines the boundaries in every dimension? Is it the creators of the platform, or it happens over the time? So I'll give you an example. In a physical world, if I, you know, it's a horrible example, but if I slap someone, there will be a big consequences, right? So what are the parameters in these platforms?
Again, super good question. Again, it depends on the historical background of the platforms. It's a really good question. For example, Fortnite started as a battle royale game. Yeah, it's totally acceptable in that environment to shoot someone in the face. Totally acceptable. Like that's just.
That person jumps into one of these like exhibitions and starts to attack attendees. Then what happens?
Acceptable. If I was exhibiting as Fortnite, I kind of understand the historical context, context of that background. But very interestingly, because Decentraland is a bit different, it's a decentralized environment. It's controlled by what we call a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. So anyone that owns land or owns the currency of Decentraland has voting rights within that environment. It's not ideal. It's a massive political experiment of how you do member representation, how you do voting rights, how you do like political, like, you know, there's vote rigging, there's everything you can imagine in a political system happens within a virtual environment because we can right now. So people start playing. But the concept is that it should be owned by the users and the users should decide what they want. So for example, in Decentraland's history, when Decentraland started, people were trying to get people together to get porn districts. It's like, yes, virtual reality, we want pornography. Actually, the Decentraland community voted not to have pornography within Decentraland. So you can't create content for Decentraland that crosses what the community would consider as being pornography. And you actually can't create avatars that they would consider to be gratuitously violent. So although Decentraland isn't a game for children, it's officially a game or a virtual world in which you have to be an adult to enter. And so the mentality is for designing for adults. Actually, the community is already putting guardrails around a lot of the content that's there. And then obviously, if you're dealing with a centralized organization like Fortnite, Epic Games, they decide all of that parameter. So as artists and creatives, it's getting involved with that conversation to sort of see how we, as designers and creatives, can start influencing that narrative as well. So there's enough freedom to create, but again, we're kind of creating those social norms at the same time through the content that we're creating.
Well, thank you so much. I'd like to follow on the question about boundaries, but talking about like design and this gaming aesthetics, is there any kind of boundary of what can be designed? I'm an architect, I'm thinking like spatially, is there something which is not possible in this kind of virtual realms? And again, who decides? Is it also the same owners of the land that decide like this design is not possible in our world or not? Thank you.
Many of them of both the ownership, key questions of ownership and rights of access, and also the limits of the technology. So for someone like, and everyone's like pushing it right now, So for example, we're designing an exhibition about spatial internet, and many of our artists right now, this is not Meshfair, this is another one, that we're looking at a different virtual environment. So I'm having to contact virtual environments and going, okay, what's your file size limit for GLB files? It's very basic right now, okay? What these artists will create is based on file size limit. For a Meshfair installation, I can only give them 10,000 triangles and 15 megabytes, which is nothing. For if you're used to designing with Unity, you're designing with, literally, I had an artist last year send me an installation. I had to go back saying, this is 2 million triangles. I need you to get it under 10,000. So having those conversations it's different worlds. So designing for Decentraland is very low poly, 10,000 triangles for a mesh installation, 15 megabytes. Whereas someone who's creating for AR, if you want to do an AR installation, upload it to Artivive, it has to be under 5 megabytes. If you want to upload it on Cyber, it has to be under 30 megabytes. If you want to use it in a Unity environment, you've got more megabytes. So it is really dependent on which technologies you want to meet people into as to how many megabytes you have to play with. For many artists, that's kind of like inspiring. It's like, okay, what can I build under 15 megabytes? For others, I've had people drop out and say, whoa, I can't, for my style and my work, I just can't adapt my practice to these restrictions.
Hi, as somebody who has a gaming background and who has designed narrative experiences in communal worlds, and as a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, which is collaborative storytelling, one of the things that you mentioned is that in gaming there are a couple of pathways for people to have a communal experience and also to make a career out of it. So for instance, we have streamers, we have people who play video games, we have also kind of like content creators for specific worlds. What would be the equivalent of that in the virtual worlds that you inhabit, experience, and produce in?
I think it's directly have content creators. Okay. We have content creators, we have streamers, and you'll see with Fortnite, most of the content isn't consumed in Fortnite, it's consumed from streamers and game players broadcasting their experience of Fortnite. It becomes this whole new layer of content. What we're seeing in virtual worlds, though, is increasingly people start defining themselves as their avatar creating that content. So when I did Wellness Week in January, I was doing live interviews that were being streamed into a virtual world and on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on YouTube with avatars. So I was in conversations where I was the only human face talking in a panel discussion where the 3 other people in that panel discussion were avatars talking. And I have worked professionally with, like, for example, Tanpoko. She's a really great metaverse influencer. She was the official model for Metaverse Fashion Week last year. She streams a lot. She works across multiple metaverses, on cyber, spatial, Mona. Like, she's an influencer within this space. I have no idea what Tanpoko looks like in real life. She associates with her avatar. She talks as her avatar. If she's at a conference, she would be on the screen talking with us today as an avatar. So this is where this is the kind of difference between classical gaming streaming, where you're the guy with the mic on, you're talking as you play, and then this, which is taking the virtual world identity and bringing it into other media streams.
Hi, thank you. I'm just wondering, I'm often surprised by how conventional the spaces are actually. So I'm just wondering, you talked about kind of authentic experience and why, is there a kind of a moment of alienation where if this is not, I mean, if it doesn't resemble actually the real world, as in there's a floor, there's a ceiling, there's an object, there's a city that we identify as a city, so then there's a moment where there's obviously a moment of alienation where nobody wants to interact because they don't understand what's going on. Is that right? Or?
It's a really good question, and we get criticized a lot for, like in this skeuomorphism in this space. But I think it's exactly what you say. It's about access. So because everyone's creating these new experiences, it's being able to give people enough visual cues that they don't have to second guess their behaviors so much. If it's an art gallery, they kind of need the visual cues that it's an art gallery. We really haven't pushed people enough through experience to take them into very different experiences yet. And transitions, I wish I had, if I would talk again, it'd be more about transitions. Transitions are becoming incredibly useful for virtual environments because you want to be taken, we don't have the cues yet. In theatre, when an experience starts, the curtains open. And we all have that visual cue that something's about to begin. In virtual environments, we don't. And we're also timetabling that across multiple geographic regions in one time space. We don't have that norm right now that people turn up on time. We don't have the norm that you stay for an experience, then you leave. There's not that social accountability of coming in and out of experiences. It's not like a Zoom call where you kind of know where everyone's there and then when you disappear. You can be completely anonymous in these spaces. So in our architectures and design, we have to put in enough visual cues that people kind of have some guardrail around their behaviors. If not, we can't differentiate between a battle royale and a performance poetry event. It's just like trying to really bridge these realities. But I think we are keeping it safe right now because of that, but we're pushing it as far as we can and more. But unfortunately, I see a lot of architects coming in and saying, okay, I want to create a really cool building. I had one for Wellness Week, which was inspired by the Gestalt empty chair technique. And it was just 2 empty chairs and then this incredible kind of wavy structure around it. And what people do is they turn up and they go, sit on the chair and go away again. They don't engage with what the architect intended to do because there isn't the way marking, there isn't arrows showing somewhere where to go, how to proceed through that experience. And I think we can learn a lot from gaming around that. I watched a really good analysis of Zelda and how these open platform games, you need to give people enough autonomy and enough surprise, but still show them kind of where you need them to go in other ways. Because if not, people enter, they don't know what to do, and they leave again. And we get that comment a lot with Decentraland, that people enter, they stand, no one talks to them, and then they leave again. Because they really don't know how to start exploring and interacting with an open world environment. They need a door, they need to have that kind of transition between one state to another. They need to have a beginning, a middle, and end to that experience. And they need to kind of know enough of what's going to happen so they feel secure to stay and anticipate that kind of step within their experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bei, for this great presentation. And let's think about, as she say, the metaverse as a radical medium. Thank you.